Hi, this is Dr. Swari, and I'm here with dissertation chapter 3, and we are going to be talking about a methodology section. So let's jump right into it. I just want to say welcome to my YouTube channel, and if this is your first time, please subscribe. So basic outline for research methodology, we're going to look at the introduction, research design, population, sample and sampling techniques, role of the researcher, data collection instruments, procedures for data collection, ethical issues, validity, reliability, data analysis, interview guide, or observation. So when you start chapter 3, you're going to have that heading there, methodology. All right. And then you're going to do an introduction. The introduction is going to give you an overview of the chapter, and it set the stage for the research. Okay, it set the stage for the research design, data collection, and analysis techniques uh, for chapter 3. All right. So this section also explains why the chosen methodology is appropriate for the research questions and objectives. So usually it's about 5 to 6 lines, depending on what you want to add. I don't think it hurts to add more, but usually it's 5 to 6 lines. And according to APA 7th edition, you do not you are not supposed to to put a head in the introduction. Just write, and when you are done with it, you move to the next section. Qualitative research methods. These are research methods that we look at when you are doing qualitative research: phenomenology, case study, narrative, grand theory, and ethnography. So for this research, for this presentation, I'm specifically going to focus on phenomenology. We will, in our subsequent videos, we're going to bring uh, presentations on case study, narrative, grounded theory, and ethnography. But today is phenomenology. Now, phenomenology. The phenomenological approach describes the importance of the phenomena, by exploring it from the experiences of the participants in the study. So we are looking at that phenomena, of the participants. A phenomenological study is not only focused on events being studied, it is also focused on the political, historical, and social context of what uh, is being studied. A phenomenological study is appropriate for this reason. Uh, an interviewing process that entails data collection from participants who have experienced the phenomena, according to Creswell and Paul. So then you are going to talk about the two approaches to phenomenology. So after you talk about, you write your introduction, and then you go to your research design, and you talk about phenomenology, and you define phenomenology. And then you are going to come to the approaches of phenomenology. You have transcendental phenomenology, and you have hermeneutics phenomenology. In this chapter, you will talk about the two approaches. Okay. Um, so you define each, and then cite them, and talk about them, and which direction you're going to go. Are you going to go with the transcendental phenomenology, or are you going to go with the hermeneutics? So with the transcendental phenomenology, okay, let's say after you have defined it, then you can, that's an example. Transcendental study gives you an unbiased description of the participants, the participants. During this process, the researcher analyzes the data as the participants experience it, according to Creswell. Then you can also bring in another reference and say, maybe according to Mustakas, or another reference that you found, but this one helps a lot. Transcendental phenomenology focuses less on the interpretation of the person conducting the research study, and more on the participant's experience during the study. So transcendental uh, 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 focuses less on the interpretation of the person doing the study versus the hermeneutic, where it focuses more on the interpretation of the person conducting the study. So we have here hermeneutic phenomenology focuses on the lived experiences of the participant and is also based on the interpretations of the participant in in a specific context during the research. So that's the difference between the hermeneutic phenomenology and transcendental. One is focused, the transcendental is focused on the unbiased description of the participants, and the hermeneutic is focused on the interpretation of the life experiences of the participants. So as you can see, according to Lavater 2003, the study of hermeneutic phenomenology is key to the interpretation of the researcher's personal reflections on the research topic and other pertinent information gathered from the participants during the research. So you need to mention in your paper which approach you are going to take. If you're going to do the transcendental or you're going to go with the hermeneutics. For me, in my dissertation, I did hermeneutic because I was focused on interpreting the life experiences of the participants during the research. The next heading you're going to have would be population. What is population? You're going to define population in your paper, and you're going to talk about what population is. Explain the targeted group of individuals for your study, or the entire group that you want to draw conclusions about in a specific location. So with population, you are looking at age group, gender, level of education, status, etc. in the research. A population doesn't always refer to people. So examples, it could be employees of Alana Health, college hockey players, uh, African Americans with type 2 diabetes or type 1 diabetes in the Twin Cities. Uh, you have African immigrants with cancer. Those are some of the topics. Those are some of the examples you find on a population. So from population, the next heading will be your sample and sampling techniques. You're going to talk about what sample is. You're going to sample is the specific group that you will collect data from. All right. So the sample comes from the population. The sample represents the population. Thus, its size is always less than the entire population. So the population is like the big chunk of it, and the population is a little portion from that. The sample. You're going to explain the techniques, strategies for your selection of the representation of the population. That's the sample. You're going to talk about the kind of sampling method you use. Did you use purposive sampling or you use snowball sampling? All right. So with the purposive sampling, when I did my dissertation, I used purposive sampling. So I went out there and I got people, recruited people, and my participants were all recruited based on the purposive sampling. I did not do snowball sampling. And snowball sampling is that sampling where it is based on referral. Somebody, you interview one person and the person tells you, I know another person that you can interview and they make referrals. Okay. So it's a chain referral sampling. And then we talk about the sample size here on a phenomenology. So for phenomenology, it's going to be between generally 5 to 25 participants. It depends on you how many people you're going to interview on a phenomenology. So you have certain number that when you get there, then you have to stop. That's the process of saturation. When you are interviewing people and you get to a certain stage and you are not getting any new information, there is no need to continue the process. So let's say you interview 12 people and you still keep getting the 13th, the 14th, the 15th, still keep saying the same thing on the same topic, then you might as well, then you have reached saturation. You need to stop and just base your analysis on the number of people that you interview. So the focus here is to understand the essence of the life experiences of individuals who have experienced the phenomena. That's the primary focus on phenomenology. Data collection procedures. So you are in chapter 3, you're going to have data collection procedure as a heading, and then you're going to talk about you say, let's say for this phenomenological study, the data collection method and the data collection procedure included this what? What did you include? What did you do? The research approval process. How was the research approved? Coming from your dissertation committee, and at the same time going to the IRB, the Institutional Review Board. So you got one approval from the dissertation committee, and your work sent to the IRB, and you have to go through the IRB, and after that, you are clear to conduct the research. The recruitment of the participants, you're going to talk about that in your paper. How did you recruit your participants? How did you get your participants? What information did you send out to be able to encourage people to participate in the research? You talk about the interview procedures, your interview guide questions, what method of interview did you use, what kind of a document you use to get people to participate in your research. You talk about the instrumentation. So we're going to go into details in that instrumentation. You use interview or another method to be able to gather information from the participants, and also data analysis procedures. Now, the role of the researcher, the researcher's background. So this is one section where you, as the researcher, you are the instrument for the research. Now, you're going to talk about yourself here. You're talking to your academic background, your work experience, your nationality, and then you're going to talk about how you are going to bracket yourself during the research because you want to bring credibility to the research. You explain the strategies to minimize biases, in this section too. You're going to talk about why you decided to conduct the research. So this is going to be another section in chapter 3. You're going to have the heading, the role of the researcher, and maybe you can have 3 paragraphs or 2 paragraphs, depending on how you want to structure your paragraph. Instruments for data collection. We're just talking about it. Collecting data for the research is very important. Okay. Now, how are you going to collect data? So there are different methods that you use in phenomenology or quantitative research to get your data. You can use interviews, semi-structured or unstructured interviews. You have your interview guide questions that you can use, and your questions are probing questions. So you're going to ask questions based, you're going to probe the participants as you ask the question, the participant answer. You want to be able to go there and probe them more, to ask them to get more information. Your goal here is to be able to get more information from the participant. So for the research, you can also do focus groups. Group discussions can provide diverse perspectives from focus group, okay? And then the observations, you have participant observation allows researchers to gather data on behaviors and interactions in natural setting, in the natural setting. Document analysis. So you review documents like diaries, letters, organizational records, and all of these can give you additional context and understanding for the research. All right. And then visual method, using photographs, videos, or other visual materials to capture and analyze the participants' experiences. So remember, we just talked about instruments for data collection. You're going to have a heading, instruments for data collection. You're going to explain everything there, and make sure that it is written well written, so that your readers will be able to understand what you have documented. Now, data collection procedure. In chapter 3, you have the data collection procedure heading. Explain the data collection procedure, the research approval process. All right. You're going to talk about your approval process. You're going to talk about how your research was approved by your committee, the dissertation committee. And then also, you're going to talk about the the institutional review board. You want to talk about that you went through the institutional review board and it was approved. You completed that aspect of it. And then you talk about the recruitment of the participants, interview procedures. How did you conduct your interview? What is face to face or what is a Zoom? If it's not face to face, why did you do Zoom? You got to explain. Maybe for a typical example, remember during the pandemic, some people did their interview, they had to do it face to face because by Zoom because of the pandemic. Participants agree to be audio recorded. All right, this is you have to make sure that the participant agree to be audio recorded, because when you have to record and then you have to transcribe so that you have the transcript. What happened after the interview? For your research to be credible, one thing you need to do is to perform member checking. Member checking is the process by which you take a transcript after you have converted your audio to transcripts. You take the transcript, you clean it up and read through it, and then send it back to the participant and say, look, can you please look at the transcript, read through it, it's to see whether everything I capture in the transcript is what you said. All right. So if the participant goes through that, the participant is going to come back to you and say, yes, I'm satisfied with everything you have. Yes, that's exactly what I said. And that's what we call member checking. Member checking is this method that brings credibility to the research. Okay. So instrumentation we have here, according to Creswell, the most appropriate instrument for collecting data in the phenomenological study is interview. All right. So you want to bring in some of these points from Creswell and Pope to be able to back up your research, back up some things in your research. Data analysis. You have a section, a heading called data analysis in chapter 3, and you're going to write on the process. After your interview section, you transcribe the data verbatim. That's word for word, including the laughter, the pauses, the joke. And then you talk about how you review the transcript and refine them. You listen to the recording maybe once or twice or 2 or 3 times, and then the transcript you read them 2 to 3 times. You refine them. The transcript was sent to the participants for member checking. You're going to also talk about you read through the confirmed transcript repeatedly to find meaning. Start the coding process, and then you also talk about the coding process, how you started it, whether it was done manually or with a software. And you have NVivo, MassQDA, Deduce, Harper Research. These are some of the software out there. Did that kind of the research data analysis software that you can use to create your codes, and then put find related codes, put them together, do your clustering process, and then group similar codes during the clustering, and then be able to arrive at your teams or create teams. So remember, you also discussed about your second coder. You're going to get a second coder. That brings credibility to the research. The second coder is that person who is going to review your work. Is going to do the work together and also review. You're going to meet sometimes, whether it's Zoom or whether it's face to face. But you and the second coder are going to work together to make sure you got your codes done, you got your teams done correctly, and that you have that second eye to your work. And this brings credibility to the research. The second coder is also that person you have to talk about. The person have to be an expert in the area. The person have to have authority in the data analysis process. Ethical issues. So when you are conducting research, you have to follow ethics. You want to make sure that you are doing the research ethically so that you have credibility, because this is something that is going to be published. You do not want to bring your personal emotions into the research. You want to follow You want to follow what you've learned when you were doing your CRTR training for research, and what you learn through the training, through the questionnaire that you receive from the IRB, the Institutional Review Board. So you can start your the ethical issues. You can define ethics. You talk about ethical issues in research, and then you can also talk about um, why you think the research is important and why you think ethics is important for this research. According to Ying 2016, a research study that entails human subjects must be reviewed and approved to ensure that everyone is protected. So as you can see, one, the study must be reviewed and must be approved to ensure that everyone is protected. So the IRB will have to approve it. Your dissertation committee will have to make sure that your work is done ethically. So planning for the research, it takes some time. You have to get the required training, your CRTR. You have to go through your IRB, and then uh, the IRB, based on the questions, the way you answer, you're going to recruit your participants. But how you're going to recruit your participants is going to come from the way you answer your questions through the IRB. And I tell people that sometimes you have in your paper, you would just call people on the phone. But when you go to the IRB, they're going to ask you a question, how you want to recruit your participants. Based on how you answer the question, the IRB is going to say, yes, we want it this way or we want it that way. You have to answer it the right way. And when they approve it, like in my case, I had to send a flyer out, and the IRB asked me to do a flyer. So I had to do the flyer, and I have to upload it to the IRB website for them to review the flyer and make sure that the flyer was good. And before I send the flyer to people around, or to send the flyer around to people. Okay. So prior to collecting data, all participants must be informed about the purpose of the research study. So you have to inform your participants about the purpose for which you are conducting this research. Okay, subject harm and risk. The Institutional Review Board, which is the IRB, requires that researchers take all necessary steps that are consistent with sound research design to prevent the participants from any harm and risk during the research study. This is very important, and that's why we have the IRB. So you have to go through that training. So you understand that it is important to protect the participants in the research. If they are children, if they are adults, whatever it is, their information need to be protected, their identity need to be protected. You are not going to disclose the names of the people out there. Okay, deception is one aspect of ethical issues that we see that's going to affect your research. If you instead of you using the information you gather from the participants, you decide to put your own thoughts into the research, that's being very deceptive. You are misleading the people because that's not exactly what you got. And with that, that's very unethical. Cultural biases. You need to respect people when you are doing the research, sensitive to the needs, values, and beliefs of participants in the research study. Then we want to talk about confidentiality, anonymity, the use of pseudonyms. Pseudonyms are words that are used, nouns or whatever it is that are used uh, to to conceal the identity of the participants. Okay, so let's say you interview John, and you are not going to use John's name, but rather you are going to use, maybe you can give him another name called Paul. You interview Teresa, and you want to call her maybe Alice. Okay, so those are pseudonyms. Validity and reliability. In this section, you will talk about validity and reliability. Define validity and cite where you got the information from. Talk about the experts who reviewed and approved the interview question based on the types of research study. So you're going to define validity, you're going to define reliability, And then you're going to talk about the experts who review and approve the interview questions. You're going to talk about them briefly. So let's take, for example, you're going to say, example, to ensure the validity of the content, the interview questions were approved by 2 experts who specialized in drawing up questions for this type of research study. All right. If we approve, if the interview questions were approved by 3 experts, you say 3 experts, and you're going to talk about them. You're going to include their names and place of work. Another thing you're going to talk about would be triangulation. Triangulation is the process by which quantitative researchers use multiple methods or data sources to get an understanding of the phenomena as experienced by the participants. All right. So you want to define triangulation and talk about why you think how you approach validity. So how you work to make this research credible. So the method of triangulation was used. You use experts to review your questions. You follow ethical standards as set by the IRB. So all of these, like member checking, peer review, clarifying researcher bias, these are steps that must be taken. You have to define them in your paper and talk about what you did to make the research, valid, Okay. And then when it comes to reliability, example, you would define reliability like you did for validity. Okay, you could say reliability is enhanced by taking detailed field notes, using audio recording devices, and transcription of digital files, according to Creswell in POV 2017. Talk about the protocols and the processes you use to ensure that the findings of the study demonstrate consistency, credibility, confirmability, transferability, dependability. You're going to discuss each term. You're going to define each term and discuss them in in chapter 3. So let's say consistency. According to Golas-Shannon, 2015, consistency is a process by which the administration of the instrument is consistent across all study participants. What does that mean? Now, you have your interview guide questions, okay? And maybe you have 12 participants. The same interview guide questions that you gave to participant 1 was the same interview you gave to participant 2. You give the same interview question to participant 3, just like that. So your document is consistent across all study participants. And then you talk about credibility. Now, you define credibility. The confidence that can be placed in the truth of the research findings is referred to as credibility. Credibility establishes whether the research findings represent plausible information drawn from the participants' original data and is a correct interpretation of the participants' original view. So now to bring credibility to your research, you want to make sure that the information you gather from the participant is exactly what you have in your research. That's what you are using. Nothing. You are not twisting anything. You are not doing anything to change the interpretation of the participants, what the participants said. You are using the participants' original views. Okay. Yeah. So that's reliability. And also we have consistency. We have credibility. You have confirmability, transferability, and dependability. All of these have to be talked about in your paper in chapter 3. Reliability. Some techniques used by qualitative researchers to establish credibility in the research study are prolonged engagement with participants, member checking, peer debriefing, reflective journaling. All right. And then dependability is the stability of the data over time and the conditions of the research study. You have to state that in your research, in chapter 3, you define it and cite where you got the definition from. And you can also say for the findings to be dependable, the researcher ensured that the research study procedures were documented and that another researcher agreed with the audit or decision trails at each stage during the research process. So once you have that second opinion from an expert, that is, they look at the audit or the decision or the steps of your research based on what you have done, it brings credibility to the research. Transferability. Is this research transferable? Transferability is another strategy for reliability in qualitative research. It's defined as the extent to which the findings of the research can be transferred to other contexts or settings with other participants. So this research can be transferred from other contexts to other settings with participants. All right. You also talk about what makes the research transferable by stating the researcher provided a thick description of the participants in the research process. So once you bring in, you talk about transferability, how the research can be transferred to other contexts or settings with other participants. And then you also talk about the thick description. You give a thick description of the participants and the process, and you make sure that you cite it. That's all part of reliability. You are doing this to make the research reliable, and you you to make the research reliable. Okay. So threat to internal validity. With threats to internal validity, in qualitative research, threats to internal validity or the credibility and trustworthiness of the findings are factors that can distort or undermine the accuracy. So anything that will distort or undermine the accuracy of the data collection, analysis, and interpretation are considered threats to internal validity. These threats can arise due to biases, inconsistencies, misrepresentations, and it can affect the process, the conclusions of the study. So let's look at some of the threats, like attrition. When a participant drop out of the study with all your consent, they can just drop anytime and say, look, I don't want to be part of this study. Yeah. So location, the location you are using for your research, is a good location. I mean, it's a conducive for the participant. Is it a place that is free of distraction and it's not going to negatively impact the research? Attitudes of the subject. Uh, how are your participants behaving? Are they having a positive attitude or negative attitude towards it? Are they willing to talk to you? Are they willing to explain things to you? So all of these are threat to internal validity during the research process. So you're going to write about these in chapter 3. So you saw that we started from the introduction all the way until threats to internal validity. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you have learned a lot today from this topic, chapter 3, which is the methodology section of your dissertation. Thanks for watching. If you have not subscribed, please subscribe to my YouTube channel. I'm going to be coming back here with more videos on different topics. So let me know if you have any questions. Thanks for watching.